Do you know how to Freizeitpark? Hallo, ich bin Stefan Burian. Zusammen mit meinen Gästen gewähre ich dir hier in diesem Podcast einen Einblick hinter die Kulissen der Freizeitattraktion. In verschiedensten Attraktionen weltweit konnte ich mir in den letzten 15 Jahren eine großartige Expertise aufbauen, die ich aus den Bereichen Operations, HR und Entertainment mit euch teilen möchte. Möchtest du neben den hier zu hörenden Insights weitere Hilfestellungen? Mit meinem Amusement Business Support helfe ich deinem Team und dir, ein nachhaltiges Erlebnis für MitarbeiterInnen und Gäste zu schaffen. Mehr zu meinem Service erfährst du unter www.stefanburian.com oder direkt per Mail an contact@stefanburian.com. Bleibt auf dem neuesten Stand und abonniert diesen Podcast gerne auf Spotify und iTunes und folgt mir gerne auf Instagram @howtofreizeitpark, auf Twitter @howtofreizeit. Für weitere Informationen zum Podcast und den passenden Shownotes zu jeder Folge schaut auf der Podcast-Webseite vorbei www.howtofreizeitpark.de. Und nun viel Spaß mit der neuen Folge How to Freizeitpark, dem Business-Podcast für Freizeitschaffende. It is day 2 of the IAPA Euro Expo. IAPA
Expo Europe.
That's. It was so much easier when it was just the EAS. That was much easier.
I still call it the EAS. So
stick to the old
yes.
wording. And it's day 2 of the expo. We are sitting here in a red gondola from the giant Vienna Ferris wheel. And as you may heard, I have a guest as well. Before I try to introduce you, please introduce yourself. Who are you?
All right, I'm Wim Strijbosch. I'm a researcher and lecturer at Breda University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands. I'm mostly a researcher, so my research experiences a lot. And at Breda University, we have the Experience Lab, where we try to make experience a bit more objectively measurable. And we do that by referring to all kinds of physiological measures, such as skin conductance, heart rate, brain activity, to measure what's going on in people's minds and bodies that we can relate to experience.
Wow.
Because lots of times experience is being measured by subjective questions, questionnaires, interviews, etc. And that taps into what experience is, because experience is what people have on their minds. But it's not very objective always. Then how you measure it with person 1 might be completely different from how you measure it with person 2. And by measuring bodily components of experience or physiological components, it's a bit more of an objective measure, because people cannot influence their physiology, at least, not without appropriate training. So then we have a more objective measure of experience, and I teach about that as well. We do have a program on attractions and theme parks management, which I try to implement everything that I do in my research in my lectures as well. So I lecture there about the history of the industry, fundamentals of storytelling, experience, more of the psychological approach towards things. So that's who I am in a nutshell.
In a nutshell?
Yeah.
Long story short. But that sounds very interesting. And you recently done your PhD, right?
Yes, I have.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
What was the theme about it? That's the measuring as well?
Yeah, exactly. It has a very complicated title. It's Experience Unpacked, Evaluating the Temporal Dynamics of Emotions in Tourism and Leisure Experiences.
Jesus.
Classic academic brevity. But it's about how you can measure the profiles of emotion over time, because emotions always wax and wane. They go up, they go down. They are more intense at some points in an attraction, for example, than at other points. And what scientists have found is that the pattern of this emotional profile over time, that really determines how and if you will remember that experience. There are these theories that say it's about the peak and the end, following the peak and end rule. Well, we want to find out whether that's indeed the case, because this peak and end rule comes from studies in which they ask people, put your hand in a bucket of ice water for 15 minutes and then say how you felt over the course of the time. And that's not really comparable to real life experiences or experiences in the themed industry, which are much more emotionally rich and complicated than holding your hand in a bucket of ice water.
That's true.
Yeah. So that was my PhD about.
And why do you focus on this topic? Why experiences? Why themed experiences?
The reason, of course, I have a bit of a history in being interested in theme parks and attractions. I was also always a personal hobby of mine, but I wanted to turn that into my profession. So I went to Breda University as a student myself. I followed the theme park management track there. And as soon as I got there, everybody talked about experience. That's the thing of the industry. That's what makes people tick when they come to theme parks, etc. But whenever I would ask either my lecturers or fellow students, okay, if it is so important, then please tell me what is experience. And then people always came up with fuzzy answers such as, yeah, it's the things that go on in your mind. Yeah, but what's going on in your mind? And yeah, that's experience. So you had all kinds of circular reasonings. And the discussion, it was a bit like an elephant in the room. Everybody said experience is important, but nobody was able to actually give a proper definition of what experience was. So I thought, let's tackle that. And I also already found out that I like doing research a lot, other than most of my fellow students who were not really that much of a fan of doing research. And that eventually turned into an academic master program. And then I liked it so much that I actually followed up with a PhD. And just before my PhD, we had a new colleague that was being hired, and he had a background in neuroscience.
Ah, okay.
So 1 and 1 is 2. And then I took him as my PhD supervisor, and last year that turned into a successful graduation.
Awesome. That sounds very interesting, and I think that's a good point what you said, because most people really going into the attractions management or operations or whatsoever, or administration, but tackling the topic about experiences on your point of view, like what is experience, how can we make it measurable?
Exactly.
That's a complete different thing, and I heard that for the very first time.
Yeah. Well, thanks. It's a bit strange because also in the scientific literature in tourism and leisure, people kind of take experience for granted.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, it's really a self-evident word. I mean, if we talk about experience, in our guts, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But if you want to make something measurable, you need to have very clear definition. You need to identify the underlying constructs, the core ingredients, in order to be able to measure it.
Yeah.
And if you really want to manage experience, you can't manage something if you can't measure how you're doing. So you can do all kinds of things, and then you can just see, look at people's faces, etc. But that's not a real good measure of experience. So in order to be able to measure something, you need to have a clear definition, and then you need to really tackle what it actually is that you're talking about in a very dry, scientific way. So it's not always the discussions that you'd like to have on a Saturday evening, for example, but it's necessary if you want to develop your measurement instrument.
So did you come up with kind of a good procedure to measure it, or is it still like an ongoing thing? Because as you already said, it's changing. It's depending on your emotions, on how you feel, how the weather is. There are so many different things going into that.
Yes. So I would say the experience mostly consists of two components. On the one hand, that's perceptual components, so the things that we take out of the outside world and are able to make sense of. So, for example, I'm seeing wooden panels here. I see a cap of How to Fight Side Park there on the wall. That's perception.
Yeah.
The other component is emotion, and emotion that basically gives the color to our perception in terms of whether we want more of it or whether we want less of it, which kind of approach avoidance behavior. And emotions determine, they give meaning to what we experience in the outside world. If we would experience everything without emotion, it would be like a boring documentary. But emotion makes the documentary of perception a bit like a movie, where you have certain episodes that really stick out, that are memorable, meaningful, perhaps even transformational. And other parts are so regular that they can easily be forgotten. Because, not everything we experience on a daily basis is being stored in our memory as a memorable experience. So our mind needs to be very selective in what is worth storing on our internal hard drive and what can we easily forget about. And because emotion has such a big influence on that memorability, people often see emotion as a core ingredient of experience.
Yeah.
And therefore we have decided in our lab to focus on measuring emotions. And emotions come with physiological components. So you can measure them from the body. Not directly, because it's always a bit an indirect way. For example, it's not that if I measure heart rhythm or skin conductance that I can tell exactly which emotion you're feeling. We can only measure emotional engagement. So it's a bit more of a quantification of emotion. But then by following up, asking you questions, looking at your facial expressions, we can give a color to that quantification. So if you combine all measures, you can have a very nice profile of how much emotion and which emotion did you feel at which moment in time during, say, a visit to a theme park attraction. And so measures of emotion, that's what we're really focusing on. You have other ways of measuring perception. For example, you have these glasses that can measure eye tracking. That comes into the field of perception a little bit and attention as well. But since emotions have such a large role in making experiences memorable, we've decided to focus on that part for now.
So at the end, the result will be a profile where we can see what did affect what at the end a person.
Exactly. So what I always show to my students is I do visit theme parks in my spare time. So sometimes I take these wristbands with me that are able to measure emotions, and then I'm just curious. Okay, how do I actually feel? So I went to Pirates of the Caribbean in Disneyland Paris, and I put on such a wristband, and there you can easily see what parts did make me excited or emotionally excited, and what parts not so much. And it also tells you that experience is very personal, because normally you would expect that people have high emotional arousal or emotional engagement at the drops in the ride. But if I look back into the signal, the parts where I had the highest peaks was where there were some special effects fixed that had not been working for decades at least. So there you can easily say, okay, I can make sense of this graph of emotion over time and why it made me excited there. It was the swinging pirates and the swords fighting pirates. So you can really use those signals to identify for individuals where do you get excited and not. That's nice to know, but it becomes more interesting if you do it for hundreds of people. Then you get hundreds of graphs of emotional engagement over time. And if you make an average of that, then you have a bit of an idea, on average, where do people tend to get more emotionally engaged than in other parts. And if you apply all kinds of complicated statistics to that, you can also link that to how people evaluate the attraction or the extent to which people want to recommend it to others. And if you can see, okay, apparently the emotions in this part have a very strong connection with how people recommend the ride or like the ride, then you can use that as input for further design strategies of themed entertainment. But you can also find out, okay, this part is not working so much, so maybe we should improve that particular section. And because you have hundreds of people, you tend to have results that speak for a large group of people rather than just for one person that's telling you how they found the ride. And I think that's a major improvement. So you really have evidence-based experience design rather than subjective impression-based design optimization.
But when you talk about that, you said that for yourself, it's a little bit a dry thing. Being so scientific with experience, with emotions, and do people sometimes tend to say you're sucking out all of the entertainment out of the experience, or is it just like it is really hard evidence that something's happening right now?
Yes, I would say the latter. Yes, it's dry, boring stuff, but generally that's all taking place behind the scenes. So yes, there's data collection, cleaning up data, etc. But that's all hard work. We do that behind the screens. But what I've noticed up till this point, every time we show the final graph of what the emotion profile is over time, sometimes it leads to surprises where people say, oh, I had never expected that there would be emotional engagement at that particular moment in time. For example, we measured it during a musical theater show in a theme park in the Netherlands. Can't disclose the name, unfortunately. But what we did is the designers of the show said, we think that in the beginning of the show there's not so much going on. So emotion gradually builds up over time. And when we looked at the graph, we actually noted that the beginning of the show was one of the most exciting moments of the show. So then that is some food for thought for the designers. Okay, apparently something else is happening than we expected there to happen. So they can use that discrepancy between expectations of actual emotions and actual emotions as input for maybe improving the show, maybe for future shows that they think, okay, apparently excitement is there in the beginning, we can work on that, or we can piggyback on that. Sometimes it is perfectly in line with what designers have designed for. Then we ask designers, okay, before we do the research, can you actually tell us what do you want your guests to feel at which moments in the ride? And then sometimes it turns out that the designers had a really good idea of what they wanted their guests to feel, because it is a one-on-one match, and that's also it's a bit reassuring because it's nice to have gut feeling, and it's nice to, and I think that's a really important point in this industry, because if you would do everything based on data, everything would look the same, and we do not want that to take place. But how nice is it if you can justify your gut feeling a little bit with some data on the table as well? And I think you should see it as complementary, and not as replacing.
It must be, because when you plan and design and you have ideas and you mentioned gut feeling, you always try to get as close as possible, but when you have the evidence that it's really affecting the people like you intended, there must be a great compliment for them as well.
Yes, absolutely, and also gives a bit of reassurance that they're doing a good job, right?
Just a good tap on the shoulder.
Yeah, exactly.
And how do you put all those data, all those information, all your knowledge into a lecture?
You have to see, in science you always have theories that you test by collecting data, and then you try to see, okay, can my theory explain these data? You don't do that with one study. It really requires a couple of studies, maybe 10 or so, until you have a good theory where you think, okay, this is how things work. Then I can start talking about it. So then I can start using it in lectures. Okay, if you want to know something about experience, this is generally how it works. So as soon as you have enough data on the table to make a story that you can generalize to all kinds of attractions, theme parks, contexts, then you can start educating people about it. Like, hey, if you're designing an attraction, this is how the psychology of people visiting theme parks works. Take that into account for your design. So it's a bit of a long-term process, but that's always the case with academia. Academia tends to go very slowly, but because of the slow page, things tend to become more robust. When I have collected enough data to really substantiate a theory, I include that theory in my lectures, and I try to bring that across to next generations of students, but also established industry members. What I think is really important, and sometimes science tends to fail a little bit in that, is to make science approachable and accessible. So what I always do is, as soon as I have completed a study, I try to submit something at either an IAPA Expo to talk about it and to make the results approachable, accessible and understandable for a non-scientific audience. But also at the SAID conference of the TEA. So I always try to find an outlet to make things more accessible for non-scientific people. It's students, outings like that, that I hope will valorize science a bit more into the theme entertainment industry.
But you said that you're a theme park fan as well? You're visiting loads of theme parks. You're from the Netherlands. You have one of the most beautiful parks in the world just around the corner. And did that study change your perspective on theme parks, or is it still the same that you still can enjoy as a fan a theme park?
Not so much anymore, but I think I lost that a long time already. Which to some extent also makes you a bit sour sometimes, because you're approaching everything from a very critical perspective. So what I try to do to have pure experiences, I try to avoid YouTube. So because if I watch YouTube on rides, I already start forming my opinion, etc. But what I really try to do is postpone a little bit, just go on the attraction for the very first time, have a really pure experience that's unbiased by anything else, and just let it come across. So that's a tactic that I use to do that. But also it's good to have family around you that are not necessarily industry experts, because that also makes you relate to how they experience the ride. For example, last week I went to Efteling for the very first time with my small niece, who is 3 years old. And I had a great day just because of seeing how she reacts to everything, how excited she got by every little thing, whereas I would normally walk past that or have opinions about that. So hang out with people that are not industry experts. That's the way in which I tackle that deficiency.
So you get the new emotions from your participants.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And actually, I think that's maybe a piece of advice for industry professionals as well. I know Olaf Vugts, who used to be the creative director at Efteling for a long, long time, or at least the director of the Imagineering department. At one point, he would just walk with a camera at the height of the eye height of children to see what little children did actually see. And that made him realize, little children see a lot of walls, see a lot of fences. So that gave him the input to decide we should open up things a little bit more. No walls, only small fences, etc. So try to empathize with your target audiences by visiting together with them, visiting the park from their perspective. It also gives you some input for how to approach your park from that point of view.
Yeah, exactly. Having a second opinion or a change of perspective is always very helpful.
Exactly.
What would you say is the big advantage of studying and lecturing at Breda?
I would say the biggest advantage is that most courses in the world that do something with theme parks, theme environments, are minors, are very small courses within the larger study program. At Breda, we have really decided to make a full specialization out of it. So we're still part of larger study programs, which are general leisure and events management or general tourism management. But then from the second year on, people can follow an entire track that is solely dedicated to attractions and theme parks. And this industry has some unique features over other disciplines within leisure and tourism. I mean, theme parks are something completely different than events or hotels, because theme parks tend to combine all those things together. Yeah. So you need to have a bit of a multidisciplinary approach to things rather than solely thinking from a hotel point of view or event point of view. And I think we take that into account at Breda. The second thing is that we've been doing this for quite some time now, so the network at Breda University is quite good. Which makes that you have easy access to internship positions at companies that are maybe difficult to reach from, if you're not already enrolled in the network. We have connections with Walt Disney World for the Disney College program, where we have a new group of students going for the first time again after they put it on hold for Corona. So we have all kinds of connections in a very established network that is really beneficial for both students but also for industry themselves, because they get to be in touch with the next generation. And I think being in touch with young people that have fresh opinions, that have not been in the daily grudge of working in this industry every day by day, that sometimes puts things on your radar that might have seemed self-evident up to that point. And I think that's the real importance of the next generation, to bring in a fresh perspective from another point of view.
Yeah, and I'm still somehow confused why there is not much more going on in studying more about tourism, leisure, especially theme park industry. Breda is, I think, the only well-known university we have in Europe.
Yes.
Or maybe farther away. There are some programs in Germany which is a dual program where you work and then you can study, but this is always more tourism focused, where you get more of the bigger picture, but you don't have that specialization on experiences, on operations, all that important stuff what you have in theme parks. Why do you think, and why the Netherlands?
I'm still asking myself that question. I think it has a bit of a history with Efteling being in the Netherlands. Efteling is one of the oldest theme parks, at least in Europe, I think, that have really, from the early moments on, have devoted themselves to theming and to putting people in other worlds. And you see all kinds of organizations in the Netherlands that have kind of, went along that success. P&P Project is in the Netherlands, Eurovision is in the Netherlands, Vekoma is in the Netherlands, a lot of manufacturers are in the Netherlands. And I still don't know why, because we're quite a down-to-earth mental in terms of mentality. And you need some fantasy to work for these organizations. But I think Efteling has something to do with it, and that fostered a certain environment within which people thought, okay, apparently you can get a career in that industry. Why not make a career out of it? And I think that's one of the reasons why there are not so many fully dedicated programs to themed entertainment, because in the general opinion of people people do not consider theme parks as a career opportunity.
Yeah.
Especially in the Netherlands, it's often seen as things you do for a summer job.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than something that you can really build a career and really go up to the highest levels within the industry. And I think if you compare to hotel management, for example, you see how many hotels there are and how many career perspectives there are of really moving up from a front desk employee to being the CEO of a very own hotel. So I think the reason that people do not consider themed entertainment as a standard career trajectory is one of the reasons that there are not so many programs around.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really tough. And when I think back when I told people that I was working in a theme park, the first question was, "Oh, you're on one of those costumes."
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And it's more than that. It's more than, walking about like Mickey Mouse. It's really like a small city with so many departments, so many expertise, so many professionals. You need to run this, especially when you think about at Efteling, which is a massive thing.
Yes.
Hotels and stuff, and it's a really big industry.
There are some programs popping up, though. You see some programs in the American West Coast and East Coast, close to Hollywood, well, because of all the theme parks there, Los Angeles, and close to Orlando, Georgia, because of all the theme parks there. You have Rosen College, for example, in Orlando, Florida, which are already have some master and bachelor programs in terms of themed entertainment. But also, I think at a university in Savannah, in Georgia, I forgot the name now, sorry for that. They really have design programs where you have an art school that is now also offering themed entertainment design, which
cool.
was not happening before.
Yeah.
You also see some specializations occurring in Hong Kong, Macau, because you have these in the entertainment industry there as well. So I think as soon as you have a bit of the a bit of an ecological themed entertainment environment, that eventually these education programs will pop up. And why that has happened in Breda, the Netherlands, I think because it's close to Efteling, and to other big names in the themed entertainment industry. Who knows what country will follow in Europe?
Not Germany.
No, you don't think so?
I don't know. I'm a little bit. No, not a little bit. I'm very critical about the German audience because I believe that we are a little bit too cautious in terms of making something new, taking some risks. And when you look at the Netherlands, I mean, your mentality is very open, very fresh. There's a good handling with failure culture. And if you look like immersive installations like Dolores or the new thing in Breda, which I haven't seen yet, but it looked amazing what I saw in the internet. And we're not that, we don't take risks.
And nonetheless, Adrenaline has opened at your local park.
So there is a small town called Rust in the southern of Germany. It's like, in Asterix, in the comics. Yeah. There's the small little town doing their own stuff. Yeah. And Phantasialand as well. They are doing really big changes.
Look at Fly.
It is such an incredible thing. And
Absolutely.
also, from a strategic point of view, I mentioned, I think that yesterday always in my interviews, like having no annual passes is a big risk, but it's so much more for your experience. When I am being there as a guest, as a full-paying guest, I have no long queue lines anymore. No. I have a great day, and that's a risk as well. But I think we are not in that way where in the future, like I was thinking about having Meow Wolf in Germany. You won't see that in Germany. That's not happening.
I think the Dolores attraction in Tilburg originated from an art installation in Berlin.
And that's the thing that annoys me.
Yeah.
And Berlin is like a thing for itself because it has an own culture and people are more open. It's more metropolitan area with more people not from Germany and not from Berlin as well. So I think everything is possible there. Yeah. And they're doing a great job as well. But as you can see, they have done their small stuff in Berlin, but now opening like Dolores and I don't know if they are involved in the second location. I'm not sure, but they're going abroad as well because they see there are no other cities in Germany where you can really go and say, "Hi, we're trying it out." Yeah. But in terms of that, what do you think? It's a really we're looking into the crystal ball. Where do you see this industry moving? And what will happen? What will we see more? Or what is your wish? What would you like to see more in this industry?
I think this industry has always been about growth, bigger, more people, higher attendance numbers, etc., because that benefits the economic model of this industry. And in the end, this industry is a mass entertainment product, so it relies on large numbers. But on the other hand, what you see happening is smaller initiatives that you can do with smaller groups of people that are really booming. If only a couple of years ago, look at the boost of escape rooms.
Yeah.
And let's face it, people are willing to pay 150 euros for exactly 1 hour of entertainment. So apparently there's something in there that makes people excited for it, that decides them to go to an escape room and not to a theme park. And I think that the theme entertainment industry should look at what makes those smaller initiatives so attractive for people to go to, that we can implement within theme parks themselves. And I think these more exclusive experiences like Adrenaline are a good way of going there. You also see these VIP experiences. I'm not so sure about that, because what I dislike is the exclusivity vibe that comes along with it. That's only affordable for the higher target groups, the higher classes in society, and I think that theme parks should always be a project for the middle class. Because you need masses. It's a mass entertainment product, and that's where the mass is, I would say.
Yeah.
But I think looking at those smaller experiences that are really successful and implementing that within themed entertainment, I think that would really be beneficial. And I think theme parks should sometimes look back at themselves a little bit more. They always try to look ahead, but also look back. Hey, what made me successful in the first place? And never try to forget where they come from, their history, etc. So, and that's easy for me to say, because looking back is what we do in academia. We look back to predict the future. I think the industry should do that a little bit more. Like, look back at their own history, what made them successful to begin with, and how should they keep that original unique selling point alive in their today operations. So those are my 2 cents on where I think the industry should go. Stay true to yourselves, I would say.
I mean, Efteling is, one place that it's doing it in perfection. I believe. I'm not saying this. No, I'm really saying this as a fan, because all the perception, the haptics of what you see, it's especially the new attractions. They still look like they have been there for ages.
Absolutely,
and they're doing a great job in staying true to their own brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way in which things are executed at Efteling, that's really not seen anywhere else, not even at Disney, I think. And that's a bold statement, I know, but maybe there's one example. There's a zoo in Belgium, Paradise.
Oh my God! And
their use of authentic materials is really impressive. I went there 3 weeks ago, and I hadn't been there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
This new entrance with mosaics, with real mosaic tiles, real marble floors, no spray concrete or whatever, no printed graphics. That really blew my mind away. People should go there because it remains to be a hidden gem of Belgium.
Exactly.
And I think people should discover that hidden gem more and more.
It is such an amazing experience. We did a overnight experience there in a walrus house with having a view into the pool of the walruses. And it was just mind-blowing. So I really destroyed all zoo experiences from now on. I can't really visit a zoo without saying, no, that's not like Paradise. No. They're doing it better. It's really crazy. It's like visiting, what I always say is like visiting Disney Sea as a first Disney park. You are destroyed for life. If you go then back to, I don't know, to Paris, you will be disappointed.
And nonetheless, I think Paris is still one of the aesthetically most pleasing Disney parks. I still remember very distinctly when I first went to Magic Kingdom in Orlando. I think, is this it? Paris is way more beautiful, and there's more entertainment offering in Orlando in Magic Kingdom, but the aesthetics never make it to the level of Disneyland Paris. And that, if that is your baseline reference, and you start comparing everything to that. Yeah, you're having a hard time sometimes.
But when we talk about Disney, what do you think about the way Disney is? Well, I don't know what I mean. They are trying to fix, trying to reinvent, trying to put in so many IPs that you really have no unique rights anymore. Like Splash Mountain is now going to have an IP. What is your thought about that? Where Disney is going right now? Just that's now shit chat. It's really
that's fine.
gossipy.
That's fine. Personally, and that's really me as being a fan of Disney parks. I miss the original content. Especially because the content that they've recently put in is not my cup of tea. Marvel, I think so. So it's nice that they have that Spider-Man, and I really like the haptic system where you can just wave your arms like a ninja and kill the spider bots. That I think is really cool. But the whole vibe is not my type of vibe. And the fact that they're hanging up everything to things that I already know from other IPs. I miss the exploring bit a little bit, exploring new worlds. And if it's not an IP that I'm really a big fan of, for example, I didn't mind when Universal opened up the Wizarding World of Harry Potter because I'm a huge Potterhead.
Really?
Or I used to be. So I'll still remember the first time I set foot in Hogsmeade in Florida. I thought, wow, it's real. And I got shivers throughout my entire body, especially when I went on a forbidden journey. Oh, wow, I can finally fly. That type of thing. But I think that only works if you have an IP that is really, really mind-blowing and really good and coherent and consistent. If you don't have that big of an emotional connection with the IP and they're using IP only as the source for new additions to the park, then that already gives me a bit of a particular goggles through which I look at the themed land, where I think, oh, but it's only Marvel, and that already sets the tone for how I experience the entire area. Maybe not for others, because there are lots of people who are really into Marvel, and they should be. But maybe they have also IPs that are not that much into, and then, for example, that you see this new addition to the Italian restaurant in Fantasyland and Disneyland Paris. I had nothing with the film. What's the film called?
Luca, I believe.
Yeah, I had nothing with the film Luca. It's nice that they have it, but that's about it. And business-wise, I can understand. I can understand why you would want to piggyback on the success of IP that has already proven its success in other media.
Sure.
But sometimes I miss the exploring new bits and pieces and theme parks that you have never seen before. And in that sense, I really liked Avalon, the recent additions, where you could just really see new things that you didn't know from films or movies, but that are really new to you. And I really like that, actually. And sometimes I miss that at Disney, like really seeing new things that you don't know from anywhere else.
And especially the point what I really like in what Toverlunch did is really plussing it up, really make it complete. Because Avalon, the original concept was really nice, and it's an okay area, but with these additions, it's now a really complete experience where you can have also like having your smaller kids with you, because there was nothing to do before for them. So one last question about experiences. Did you measure on any point any experiences with media-based attractions? Because what fans often say is, if you have media, that's fine, but we need real thing. We need animatronics, we need like really scenery, theming, etc. Do you see really comparable data between those attractions?
I can be very quick. We haven't done that. Not yet. I think that the lab has now been existing for 5 years, and only in the last 3 years we've been doing things for theme parks really in the field.
All right.
And the way in which you can really find that out is by A/B testing. And then you would have one ride in two different conditions, one with media, one with actual animatronics, and that's very difficult to have in the field because things are only built once. And if you want to base your conclusions on media versus reality, then that can be the only difference. So, for example, I cannot compare Buzz Lightyear in Disneyland Paris with Mouse au Chocolat. Because it's also two different stories. And if you're then going to compare experiential responses to one ride versus the other, then you do not know if it is solely due to media versus non-media, or maybe also to other things, maybe the IP, the type of story, the ride system, etc. So it's a bit difficult to do it that way.
Yeah.
A way to do that is to just collect data on as much different dark rides as possible, and to do what they call a meta-analysis. Is where you look at, okay, we have all these different studies, but if you take them all together, what is the main conclusion that really emerges from the data? But it's too soon for that now still. So maybe in a year of 10, a decade or something like that, we can say something about that. Like I said, academia goes very slowly.
Yeah.
So me too, I have to be patient for that. Yeah.
Okay, when you have analyzed experiences, you're lecturing, you're a fan, what does the perfect, I hate that word, but what makes the perfect experience for you?
The perfect experience for me is that where I really feel as if I'm at a different place, different time. I can really give myself to the experience itself, where I'm really in the moment, in the here and now. And I'm not thinking about, when we have to drive back home, I need to fill up my car with gas, something like that. Or, damn, I need to give a phone call to that person that I forgot. No, where you really can forget about all that and really devote your entire attention to the here and now, what's happening in front of you, with the people that you're together with. I think that's really the experience that for me embodies what I think is special in themed entertainment. And I have that in a couple of places. I have that in Pirates of the Caribbean and Disneyland Paris. To me, that really feels like you're sailing through the Caribbean. You're not in a building. You're not in Paris or in Chassis, but you're really in the Caribbean. I have that with Animal Kingdom as well, where you really feel as if you're in Africa. I mean, Kilimanjaro safaris, you're not in Africa, but it really feels you're like in Africa.
Yeah.
You're forgetting about everything outside of it. You're really in the here and now, focusing on the animals. Those types of experiences, that's what I really value, and
awesome.
I think are valued by lots of people.
Yeah. So I see a lot of Disney in you.
Yeah, that's correct. That's biased. Yeah, absolutely.
Is there any European, except for Disney and Efteling, any European experience where you said, wow, that was really mind-blowing?
Yes. I tend to like parks that really pay homage to the local surroundings.
Yeah.
So parks in Germany that I really like are Hansa Park. Also because they approach themes that are really novel to me. I had Vlucht van Novgorod. That's in Hansa Park, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or Vlucht van Novgorod these days,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. There's a T now. Yeah.
Exactly. To me, that theme felt really novel, and I thought, that's cool. Just seeing things you've never seen before. Schwur des Kernan, idem dito. I really liked it. Especially we won't spoil the listeners, right? Although I think most of your listeners will have gone there by now. Those types of things that you don't really expect, connected to a local tale, certainly that's what I really like. Tripsdrill as well.
Yes, that's a really insane place.
I don't understand anything of the animatronic shows because it's in Swabish. But how cool is it that you have animatronic shows in the Swabish language? And the Badewannenvaart,
yes.
You won't see that anywhere else except for Tripsdrill. And those things that you can only see at those particular parks really have their own identity. I like those a lot. In the same vein, I also went to Karls Erlebnisdorf a couple of years ago, and it's just so... You can really only find those things at Karls Erlebnisdorf, and when you have such a clear identity that you can only find those things at that park in particular, then I think you're really nailing it.
Yeah, they're doing a pretty good job, and I believe there is not one episode where I'm not mentioning Karls, because they are doing so many great things, and I'm really curious how this will turn out with the whole expansion and stuff. So there's quite a lot of things happening.
Although I've talked to someone from Karls yesterday, and they said, our CEO, he has a very clear vision on things, and that is we should keep things simple and not too complicated. And I think that's also the at the core values of Karls Erlebnisdorf. And I think as long as they will stick to that vision, and if that vision is really strong, I think they will stick to it. Then they will stay true to themselves.
But that's a funny thing, because when you talk about experiences, people will always say, we need to have smell and smoke and lasers and light and theming and rock work and so on and so on. But sometimes the simplest things can make for your target group, which you have to identify before, makes the biggest impact. For
Yeah.
example, have you ever heard of Freizeitpark Irland?
Yes, close to the Netherlands.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you been there?
No. 'Cause,
It
well, I've heard stories about it, and
Yeah.
especially the barbecuing there seems to be a
it's
good business model. But
yeah. It is crazy because they don't have any rides, they don't have any like really hard technical things, but what they have, for example, is a mud pit. There's a massive mountain of sand
Yes.
around. There are 5 hoses where you can spray water on it, and kids can just play in the mud. And it's that simple, and you don't have high maintenance costs and so on, and you have many slides, and it's for the family. And I've been there. I was my child is too small for all that stuff, but I was having a really great day.
yeah, I can totally imagine. Well, what I maybe I have to say something about that as well from an experience point of view. What should be simple is the concept underlying it. So I would say Rookburg is not complicated at all, because the vibe is really coherent. You're in a steampunk area where they have come up with this machine where you are able to fly.
Yeah.
That's the concept, and that concept is very simple. But it is the ways in which you make that concept come alive that can be complicated. But the concept in itself is really simple. But if you look at Rookburg, what does everybody pay attention to? Yeah, of course, flying when you walk in. But everybody's walking to those things in the floor where smoke is coming out. And that's what people are impressed by. Just because it pays homage to the concept.
Yeah.
And the concept in itself is very simple, but they have all kinds of ways in which they make that concept come alive. And I think that's where you should put your complications and be complicated, be complex, come up with new things there, but keep the concept simple.
Yeah.
And sometimes simple concepts come with simple executions, and those are very powerful. But sometimes simple concepts come with very complex executions, but they're still very successful. And I believe there is, again referring to Disney, in this the Imagineering story episode 3 or something. There's Tony Baxter saying something. Everybody can come up with details. Everybody can think about nice little tricks, etc. But what the real challenge is for designers in theater entertainment is to make the overarching concept first and use that as a framework to fill in all the details so that everything really fits together rather than details being all by themselves.
Yeah.
And I think if you have that umbrella, you have that concept where everything can fit under, keep that simple, you can make things as complicated as you want as long as it pays tribute to the very simple message that you're conveying. I think that's where you can really take advantage.
You have to have a concept and don't overdo it.
Yeah, exactly.
When you, I have many listeners who are young professionals who want to work within this industry. What would your advice be when they want to say, okay, I want to have a foot in this industry, I want to work there? What would your advice be?
My first piece of advice is go work there. There are lots of summer jobs. I also started out as a front desk employee at Toverland. And that already gives you a bit of an advantage over people who just admire the industry from an outsider perspective, because you also know how things work.
Yeah.
And it's easy to have opinions about, oh, that should be different, that should be different. But what really distinguishes you from people who merely have opinions is come up with solutions, how you can actually change it. And for that, you need to know how the machine works.
Yeah.
And the earlier you start with that, the better you have a leap advantage over people who do not work in that industry. And it starts with very simple things. I know when I was at Toverland, I thought, things can be better. And it was really about cleaning, hygiene. And then I said, well, I'll make some cleaning schemes. I'll make some hygiene schemes. That was implemented in Toverland. So it starts with very simple things that you can only know if you know how the operation works.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you know how the operation works, then you can really think about what should be different and also come up with solutions how that difference can be achieved. So that's the first piece of advice. Go work there already.
Yeah.
As soon as you turn 16 and you're allowed to be hired, go work there. And yes, some jobs are perhaps not the job that you would want to. Most people want to operate roller coasters, but there are also jobs in which you just have to swipe the streets, and in which you have to clean the plates in the kitchen. But if you really want to grow in this industry, you need to know how those procedures work and how the organization works. So
Yeah.
that's one. Second piece of advice is it's good to be a fan, but you should not be too fanatic. I mean, in the end, this is also a business where things need to be run on a day-to-day basis. And sometimes you need to develop your knowledge on that. And then it's nice to know what stepping stones in the park Frans Mak once walked on, or in the Netherlands, which stones were touched by Anton Pieck. But that's not the knowledge that you need in terms of making the operations run, letting the park work. So sometimes you need to distinguish a little bit what is nice to know and what is necessary to know. And I think if you can separate the bigger lines from the smaller details, know when to tap from which pool of knowledge, that also helps a lot.
Yeah.
And the third thing is, if you really want to work in this industry, find out what you want your position to be and look at the package of skills that is required for it. Even at BUA, at Breda University, we have lots of people coming in. I want to be a theme park designer. Then I have bad news for you. We're not a design school.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a designer, you need to be able to visualize. You need to be able to draw. So go to theater school instead. Go to a design school instead. That will really prevent any disappointments later on. So make sure that you understand the package of skills needed and select your education based on that package of skills.
Yeah.
And don't think about it as, it's a theme park program, then I must follow the program so I can become a designer in a theme park. No. Study what theme park designers need to be able to do, have a good image of what they need to do, and select the proper education with that. And sometimes that's a bit difficult, because if you really want to become a theme park designer, there is no design school for theme parks, unless you go to the US. And in design schools, theme parks are often not seen as good examples of design. So you'll have a hard time, but that's just a sour apple that you need to bite through. And you'll get there if you have those skills. And maybe the fourth tip, attend expos like this one.
Yeah.
The sooner you get to know the people in this industry, the better. Because getting into an organization is about knowing someone, but staying in the organization is showing what you can actually do.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm just confused. My wife is just standing there. I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, that's a piece of good advice, and I really can say what I've heard from former students or students who are at Breda right now. Breda?
Breda, yeah.
And if you want to work within the industry, this university and the program is a really good piece of advice, and you will find in the show notes also links to your lecturing, to your to the program. And work in this industry. That's I think the biggest advice. Try to get around to work, to just experience it for yourself. And if you experience like it's not for you, then you shouldn't do that at all, because it's as you said, it's more than just operating a roller coaster, which I've never did, by the way. I was on a roller coaster for one day, but most of the time water rides or 4D cinemas. I don't know why. That just happened.
I operated the Toos Express at Toverland once.
Oh.
And I found that was so much responsibility that I never wanted to do it again, because you operate it all by yourself.
Yeah.
You have to hit the emergency brake when people pull out their phones, and I thought, I don't want to be responsible for somebody falling out or having their phone, etc.
Yeah.
So I thought, good for once, but I'll go back to the front desk.
Yeah. It is a huge responsibility you have, and it is really hard work. Roller coasters. I mean, the Vekoma Junior Coaster, it's alright, but if you have like, I don't know, have you been to Family Park here at, no?
Unfortunately not.
Or especially when you have water rides or wooden roller coaster, where you really have to duck down. You will have
you'll feel your back.
Yeah, you will. You feel old after one day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wim, thank you so much for your time. And as I mentioned, all the information about the studying and about yourself will be placed in the show notes. And maybe one day we can talk about media-based rights and stuff, because I'm really curious about, is this just a gut feeling, what we talked about, or is it really that people need to have physical stuff?
Maybe a teaser. We're actually working on a study about dark ride experiences.
Oh,
and
awesome.
that is definitely an aspect that has come up in interviews with people. We're currently finalizing that. Maybe if we have that research ready, we can have another chat.
Yeah, we will.
And let's talk about media experiences then.
Awesome. We will do. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Stefan.
Schlussbremse, ab in die Station, Bügel auf, das war's. Liebe Freizeitschaffende, diese Fahrt ist nun vorbei. Der Ausgang befindet sich auf der rechten Seite. Vergisst nicht auf dem Weg nach draußen eure Taschen mitzunehmen und diesen Podcast auf iTunes und Spotify sowohl zu bewerten als auch zu abonnieren. Wenn ihr Anmerkungen, Feedback und Themenwünsche habt, dann schreibt mir doch gerne über Instagram @howtofreizeitpark, über Twitter @howtofreizeit oder direkt per Mail an contact@stefanburian.com. Aktuelle Informationen und Shownotes zum Podcast findet ihr auf www.howtofreizeitpark.de. Wenn ich dich neugierig gemacht habe und du das Potenzial deiner Freizeitattraktion für MitarbeiterInnen und Gäste nutzen möchtest, unterstütze ich dich gerne mit meiner Expertise. Mehr zu meinen Dienstleistungen findest du unter www.stefanburian.com und vereinbare direkt einen Termin per Mail unter contact@stefanburian.com. Vielen Dank fürs Zuhören, habt eine hervorragende Woche und bis bald!